I watched a TED Talk by Mel Bugatti about toxic work environments. Basically, what a toxic work environment is, it's a work environment, but instead of being good, friendly, and um, accessible, it's more like it's not a great work environment where people are not nice to each other and there's not really much of a benefit about being there. Bugatti he started off by asking some people if they have ever been in a targets of a toxic work environment, been dishonest in one, or have worked in a toxic work environment. As for myself, I've never been targeted in one or have been dishonest, and I've never actually worked in a toxic work environment at all. Toxic work environments happen a lot. Bugatti actually stated that they have been a lot, especially from 1992 to 2011. This kind of shows that over a two-decade period that there isn't really a lot of good environments out there to work in. Um, Basically, bullying has actually been reported to be 27% worse in a job than anywhere else. This means that basically you can get bullied a lot more in a job than, say, in life in general or at school. This kind of shows that being in a job is a lot riskier and a lot harder than it is than being somewhere else. This has basically been criticized a lot, especially for leaders. Basically, one of the big things Fagati had pointed out that leaders should care about if a employee is working in a toxic work environment because basically this will affect their performance. I'd have to agree with Fagati on this because performance can affect a lot of things. It can be, either you will either not really be motivated to do your work, you can be in fear about doing your work because you think you can make one person happy, but someone else may not. And it could also get to the point where you don't really want to go to work at all because you're just too afraid of how your performance will be. Not only does this affect you as an employee, but this also ends up affecting the business in total. A huge reason I think that this kind of happens is because even though that this behavior is unethical, which means that basically this behavior is not really allowed in a work environment, it isn't really illegal, which means that basically people do this because it isn't really told like you can't really do it like the law. Despite that though, I do think that toxic work environments aren't really great at all because they can lead to bad things down the road. Basically, there's a huge difference between a legal and a ethical standpoint about this. Basically, for ethical, it would be the rules that are implanted for a business. These are actually rules that are always going to be implanted for businesses for how they get run. Basically, for the ethical standpoint, people have to follow those concepts of how the business itself would work. And as for the legal part, it's basically a huge test of character. This basically can show where you stand as a person and where you want to stand in the future, or about how you want to deal with these issues. Basically, allowing unethical conduct is into unethical leadership. This basically means that if you are working in a toxic work environment or even an unethical work environment, this means that some leaders could take advantage of the fact that they don't really want to really be ethical much at all. Worst part is unethical leadership can also affect employees to also be unethical in these work environments. And even worse, allowing unethical leadership to take place also will allow unethical conduct. This means this will basically lead to unethical rulings as well as unethical problems that have to be maintained in the workplace. Unethical leadership can also end up leading onto unethical cultures where it can soon get to the point where people just believe that this way of a business is run for a toxic work environment. This can cause problems with the company, both financially, reputation-wise, and not really living up to their promise. Basically, the behavior escalates a lot, and it becomes a pattern. Like, we learn from people how to do stuff. To us, that's a little bit ethical because we have to learn from people to do a job and to learn how to do stuff. And it's kind of on us as people to know how to do this. An example that the guy had given out during his TED Talk was Jamie Duran. He was the CEO of JP Morgan. During his time, during during his time as CEO, he was actually giving some money to an old friend of his to help now with his life around. However, little did Durain know that because he gave that money and his friend didn't do well, JP Morgan got into some legal trouble with their funds. So this basically put Durain into a very odd position as CEO, who was supposed to be responsible for maintaining the company. Basically, Morgan actually admitted to his mistakes and admitted to learn from them. Because of this, though, he also actually ended up keeping his position as CEO of the company. Basically, bullying gets put into culture even if it's hidden. And even though people do bullying and people like to mess around and lie about it, there's the strong possibility that it will come back to get them. This basically means that while you can lie for now and while you can hide facts for now, chances are it can come back to haunt you. Basically, sometimes in most situations, leaders don't really get that many consequences. I kind of state that because of a huge part that actually plays into it, and it's the reputation. A reputation, of course, can actually help you a lot with trouble because it could be like your first defense, no matter what type of position you would have there. As for myself, I've always had a good reputation with my jobs, and I've never once caused one bit of problems or trouble at all at any job I've ever had. I do know that since I do kind of fear about a little bit of trouble, I am feared about what I would get. But I am pretty sure if there ever is any trouble that is caused by myself or does happen, I'm pretty sure I will hardly get much of a consequence because of the reputation that I hold for my jobs. Basically, you really shouldn't bully a customer because basically that ruins their experience for whatever place you're working at, and this also kind of hurts your reputation a little bit, both as an employee and as a business. And that's something that can play on further down the road, especially if the customer group would probably be spreading the word about this. Basically, we basically have to be accountable for what we do, and we can't hide it. Like I said before, we do stuff and we have to be accountable because it's the ethical thing to do. If we just hide it, we're being unethical to the business, and this can trace into a pattern of where people don't really need to admit to their problems or admit to doing something wrong. Also, if we try to hide it, we do know we have to understand that this could possibly come back to haunt us in the future, because nothing really goes unpunished at all in the business world. And the big thing here is that legal doesn't mean ethical. They're always going to be two different things. Like I stated before, ethical is just the rules that are placed for a business, no matter what type of business that is out there. And legal aspect just deals with the funds and stuff that gets taken from the business that doesn't really belong to someone. Basically, this TED Talk actually expanded my mind a lot about a toxic work environment. I never really ever worked in one myself, and I've never caused any sort of problem to make it a toxic work environment. But basically, yeah, it helped me realize exactly how much a work environment can change and what can happen from the inside. And even though I haven't worked in one before, part of me could possibly be a part in one, and I need to be prepared for whatever comes my way.